Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Last night, when we left off, I was telling you a little bit about Leon Black's problems and how they've been magnified. You know, when we were first talking about Leon Black, and we were talking about how he was under the microscope, I said I didn't think it would be long before investors and people who safeguarded their money with him started looking for the exits. And it seems like that has started to occur. There's a new article out from Bloomberg, and that's basically what they're talking about. You know, there are a lot of pitfalls for somebody who manages money when they're caught cavorting with a sex trafficker who was one of the most prolific child abusers in the history of this country, basically. I mean, that's not even going a step too far, is it? Considering what we know, considering the hundreds of girls, considering everything that has come out, and considering, you know, what has been on record with just the girls from Palm Beach would make him one of the most prolific that we know of. Then you add in the sex trafficking ring, the trading the girls around, all of it. And you definitely have one of the most prolific sex traffickers. And this is the kind of guy that Leon Black is hanging around with. And if you were in charge of these pensions and you were in charge of all of this money that people trusted you to invest, would you be moving it with somebody like Leon Black right now? Especially considering how the stock is getting hammered over his ties with Epstein? I certainly wouldn't. And it looks like that's what Leon Black and Apollo Global is facing right now. And it comes at an odd time for them because they were in the mix to jump in and buy William Hill, the sports book. So I bet you that's on hold right now. I mean, I don't know one way or the other. I haven't really dug into it, but you would think with all of these rumors swirling and all of this controversy that Leon Black has started to face, that deal might be shelved. So we'll have to see. But in this article tonight, the headline is Leon Black's Epstein links threaten Apollo's fundraising. And this article it first appeared in Bloomberg, and it is being run right here in where we're using it. The source here is on Yahoo Finance. Authors of this article, Heather Perlberg and Sabrina Wilmer. Apollo Global Management Incorporated is facing a client revolt that could choke new investments into its funds as questions persist about co-founder Leon Black's ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And that's a pretty interesting choice of words that the authors use here, right in the first paragraph. A client revolt. Remember I said that I thought something like that was going to happen? It's just, that's how it works in the financial sector. People are scared. They're going to run for the hills when it comes to shit like this. They're all looking for the exits like there's a fire. Nobody wants to park their money with somebody who knows how deep the ties really are with Epstein. And I know we got the independent investigation that's cracking off. Okay. But really, these pensions, especially these public pensions, these sorts of people and the people running these sorts of pension funds, they don't want anything to do with this. And we're starting to see that now come and start to become a reality. Cambridge Associates, an influential consultant to investors, including pensions and endowments, may stop recommending Apollo, according to people with knowledge of the matter. There are a lot of rumors swirling right now, a lot of unconfirmed rumors, stuff that I can't really substantiate, but there is a lot going on in the financial world when it comes to Apollo and people losing trust. And it's crazy because Apollo was one of the biggest engines of the whole entire market. They very powerful, very influential, and they made a lot of money. So, of course, people wanted to roll with them and ride with them and benefit off of their back, right? But now there are other places to park your money. Okay, you might get a 0.5% less of a return, but at least you don't have the cloud of Jeffrey Epstein hanging over you and all of the pensioners. Already, the Pennsylvania Public School Employees Retirement System has informed Apollo it won't consider additional investments for now. So there you go. The Public School Employees Retirement System in Pennsylvania has informed Apollo that it's a wrap. They don't want to do business with them for now. They know that things are a lot worse than Leon Black and Apollo are letting on. Wherever there's smoke, there's usually a little bit of fire, right? And in this case, I think there's a little bit more than a little. The developments follow months of pressure on Apollo from investors seeking more definitive answers about what Chief Executive Officer Black has described as professional ties to Epstein, who is awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges involving underage girls when he was found dead in jail last year. Look, there should be pressure on people like Leon Black. There should be pressure on these people to answer for their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Again, I don't know how many times I have to say it. He can't even go on the excuse of, well, this was before he was convicted. I didn't know. If you were hanging out with Epstein before he was convicted for this crime, even though I might not believe you, you at the very least have a bit of a leg to stand on by pleading that you had no idea what was going on, especially if you weren't in his inner circle. But if you were hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein after the fact, if you were still doing business with Jeffrey Epstein after the fact, if you, Leon Black, thought that having Jeffrey Epstein was a consultant after the fact was okay, then you, Mr. Leon Black, must deal with whatever comes down the pipe. Because there are repercussions for shit like that. Interest in their relationship heightened anew last week when the New York Times reported Black had wired at least $50 million to Epstein after his conviction for soliciting prostitution from a teenage girl. And that might be the conviction. We all know it's a bunch of BS. And everybody that was around him at the time knew that it was a lot more serious than solicitation. What, you don't think these people in powerful circles talk? You don't think any of these people are friends with attorney generals or assistant attorney generals or people in the prosecutor's office? Hell yeah, they are. Who do you think's donating money to their runs to get those offices? Certainly not me and you with our nickel and dime donations if you're making them. That's a fantasy. This money is being poured in by bagmen like Leon Black so that when situations like this occur, they get themselves some leniency. And it's absurd, it's gross, and I'm tired of it. Black and Apollo are now trying to dispel the cloud over the company, which depends on multi-billion-dollar fundraisings to fuel its earnings and has already seen its stock take a hit. At Black's urging this week, a panel of board members hired law firm Deckert LLP and independently examine the 69-year-old's account of his ties to Epstein, whom Black has said he turned to for financial matters, such as taxes, estate planning, and philanthropy. So, how deeply were you guys tied financially? How many business ventures were you guys involved in? How many of those were off the books? How many of those were done through intermediaries? How many of those were done through LLCs? How much of this money was reported? How much of it wasn't? How many RICO crimes were committed on a daily basis? Those are the questions I have. Leon requested and welcomes the third-party independent review. Oh, I'm sure he does. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Apollo paying for this so-called independent review? Pretty sure they are. So how independent is it when they're working on their dime? Like I said, I think they want an independent review. That's fine. Forensic investigators from the FBI should be in charge of any review. A spokesperson for Black said in an emailed statement Wednesday, he is confident that the outcome will put the matter behind Apollo in validating what he has previously communicated publicly. No, it won't. Just like it wouldn't for Dubin, just like it didn't work for Wexner or Harvard or the New York Academy of Arts. All of these internal investigations, all of these so-called independent investigations that these people kick into gear really hold no weight. Apollo is firmly committed to transparency, a company spokesperson said in an email. Leon has communicated directly with our investors on this issue, and we remain in open dialogue. Look, the only reason he's communicating is because he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Do you think he'd be coming out and just, because he's such an honest cat and say, look, you know what? I did have ties to Epstein. We were boys. We kicked it. I went to his house. We drank some booze, whatever it may be. No. Until these stories started to break, until people started asking questions, none of these people came forward. None of these people offered to help the investigations or to help the survivors get just a little bit of justice. They just went on with their merry lives. And you know why? It's because it's normalized to them. This kind of treatment of other human beings is just normal to these people. At the very least, that's the way it seems, doesn't it? There's been no allegation that Black's dealings with Epstein broke the law. Well, look, that's why we have an investigation, right? We can't just say, well, no, there's nothing to see here without having an investigation. That's what happens in countries that are run by dictators. That's what happens in countries where the so-called media is acting as a propaganda arm for the government. We see that more and more in America, but it's weirder here because the media acts as a propaganda arm for their favorite insert politician here. And now we have a country where it's not the one reality. We live in America with two realities. Anything they can do that involves outside observers to nip that narrative in the bud, in my view, will be great for the stock, said Patrick Davitt, an analyst at Autonomous Research. Look, for sure, if they could have got out in front of this and Leon Black would have came out right away and been very honest and upfront, provided documentation, went and spoke to the FBI, all of it, then I'm sure a lot of these investors would have been much more comfortable. But even with this kind of investigation, how comfortable are you going to be parking billions of dollars with Leon Black? What happens if he gets in trouble? Let's just say in speculating that he gets in trouble with a RICO charge and now all of his assets are frozen. What if they freeze Apollo? What if you have to wait to get your assets out via litigation? What if the government freezes all of that money? It's not out of the realm of possibility. We've seen it before. So I can understand why people want some clarification here. I can understand why investors are a bit hesitant. And I can understand why he's dealing with a bit of a revolt. This is heinous, serious shit. This isn't sweep under the rug, blue-collar crime. I'll pay somebody off and that's the end of it. There are way too many people who are interested in this now, way too many people who are turning over rocks and shaking bushes, and only real answers are going to be accepted. No more of this obfuscation, no more of this ducking questions, and no more of these easy pathways by the legacy media. I am kind of wondering why they didn't do this in the first place. This could have gotten the monkey off their back a long time ago. Well, I'll tell you why. Because I think that they understand that there's a lot more there. And they didn't want to unearth anything and cause shockwaves that were not needed. If Black was squeaky clean with his relationship with Epstein, if Black and Epstein weren't that tight, then they would have initiated this a long time ago. Or they would have went to the FBI and spoke with them. But they know, we know, everybody knows that Leon Black, the rest of so-called polite society, and people like Jeffrey Epstein are involved in all kinds of behind-the-scenes money moving. There's just not even a debate at this point. The Pennsylvania retirement system said it had planned to have a meeting with Apollo sometime this week, But after the Times published its story on October 12th, the pension plan held the meeting by phone the next day. It later suspended new investments. So look, I'll tell you what, I'll give them props for that. You got to stand for something, right? And if you can't stand for avoiding doing business with somebody like Leon Black, who is very close or was very close to Jeffrey Epstein, then I don't know what mountain you're going to choose to make your stand on, because this is just, next world evil to abuse children like this. PSERS is closely following the ongoing legal issues and the newly launched internal Apollo investigation, it said in a statement, without elaborating on its concerns. The Financial Times earlier reported the decision. And I knew this was going to happen, and I talked about this. It was only a matter of time. And once one leaves, once one pauses business, well, you see others start to do the same. Because once you get rattled in the financial industry, people get rattled fast. And once one person jumps overboard, it is a mass scramble to the lifeboats, folks. Cambridge, which advises on about $410 billion in assets, told clients its deliberations were prompted by lingering questions over Black and Epstein's ties. A representative for the firm declined to comment. Think about that. Cambridge advises on about $410 billion in assets. Has told their clients to step back from Apollo. This is bad news, and Leon Black is really going to suffer financially from this. Some other investors, speaking on the condition they do not be named, said they didn't understand what financial services could warrant $50 million in payments to Epstein. A college dropout, he lacked conventional training in areas such as taxes and estate planning. And it's 100% true. One of the biggest points I've talked about. I know how people like this act. I've dealt with people that are just extremely wealthy, and I know how they are. They're not just letting anybody near their money. They're not just going to let any guy, someone like Jeffrey Epstein, a college dropout, be in charge of all their dough and 50 million here, 10 million there. Bah, no big deal. That's not how these people operate. These people are all control freaks. So there's a lot more here, something way deeper in my opinion, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Leon Black. Apollo stock slumped in the wake of the newspaper's report, shedding 14% by Tuesday. It jumped as much as 6.3% on Wednesday after the firm disclosed the board's reviews. The shares ended the day up 2.6%, but they're down 13.5% in 2020. That's a bloodbath. That is just terrible. To have your stocks down, the shares down 13.5% it's a bellwether for what's to come. If they don't get rid of Black, and Black can't stop the bleeding here, boy, oh boy, it's going to be bad news. I'm talking real bad news for Apollo. And let me tell you, if they find something that connects him criminally, it's going to rock the whole entire financial world, right? Any one of these guys, if they get caught up in the financial web that Epstein was weaving and they get themselves criminally charged, boy, oh boy, will that send a message. These congressmen, these senators want to send a message after FinCEN? Well, what a message that would be. Clients' frustrations. Pension systems, often more exposed to political pressures, are known to be repelled by negative news involving their investment partners. 100% fact. You know, you get a private investor, somebody who's only worried about increasing their wealth. They don't care about any of this shit. But when you have a public pension, a pension where there is a lot of scrutiny, yeah, probably don't want that money parked with Jeffrey Epstein's good friend, Leon Black. Some have been raising concerns with Apollo for more than a year over the headlines generated by Black and Epstein's relationship, according to people with knowledge of those talks. We've reported that here for about a year now. I've heard that from many people, Many people who work in the financial sector, a lot of people that I know have talked about this, and they've said that people are really scared off and people are not comfortable with how close Black and Epstein were. And the only reason there hasn't been a mass exodus is because Apollo is so gigantic and they've made people so much money throughout the years. People are going to wait it out and see. But let me tell you what, if things start getting squirrely, you're going to see a mass run for those lifeboats, folks. Nobody's going down with this ship. 2 investors said they pressed Apollo for more information about their ties, but were disappointed with the lack of detail. Look, if I'm investing with you and I'm investing big dough, we're talking millions and millions and billions of dollars in some cases. Yeah, you better be forthright, bro. You better tell me what the hell's going on. And I don't just want like the Cliff Notes. I want details, nuance. I want to know that you did your homework. Do you have an investigator looking into this, that you've hired a private investigator? Do you have, whatever mechanism it may be? Those are the questions that I would have. And if the answer is no, my question would then be, well, why not? The firm's representatives tried to assure some clients by suggesting journalists digging into the situation would have found wrongdoing if any occurred. That is such BS. We can only do so much. We don't have subpoena power. We don't have the power to go and get these files and look at your bank statements and the transactions like the investigators do. All we can do is try and get people on record, follow the story to the best of our ability, and then disseminate that information to the listeners or the viewers or the readers or whatever the medium might be. But to suggest that the journalists digging into the situation would have had all the dirt by now, well, that's just patently false. Representatives also noted Black wasn't the only one who had done business with Epstein. Some clients said they were offered the possibility of questioning Black directly. Well, that's something I would definitely look forward to. And what does that even mean? The representatives noted that Black wasn't the only one who had done business with Epstein. So because of other people did business with Epstein, that's okay? That makes it okay that Leon Black did? I should just be okay with that then? I don't even understand what they're trying to point out there. It's such a stupid comment. Gerald O'Hara, an analyst at Jeffrey's Group covering Apollo's stock, said he's been fielding calls from investors nervous that the situation at Apollo could spiral further. I'm telling you, I've been hearing the same thing. Not from investors, but from people who work in the financial industry. They've said that there's just this like weird talk about Apollo and how they've never heard this kind of talk when Apollo's concerned, right? It's always been such a strong institution, such a staple. Nothing rocks it. They just keep on moving. But this is something that's actually sticking, that people are talking about. And that is bad, bad news for Leon Black and Apollo. But even then, private equity fund clients typically agree to have their money locked up for years. The risk isn't to existing funds, it's to Apollo's ability to attract new money. And that is the biggest slam to them, because without their fundraising, without raising new money, it's a wrap. They'll have to shut up their shop. There'll be no way that they can conduct business if they're not raising new funds every year, every quarter. And that is very disturbing if you're Apollo. There's no doubt about that. This could certainly have an impact on future fundraising rounds, O'Hara said. Bloomberg reported in April that the firm aimed to eventually raise $20 billion across several new funds to take advantage of dislocations in credit markets as well as private debt. Translation: so that they can get busy with the transfer of wealth, so they can steal from the people, so that they can take more money from the middle class and enrich themselves more, all at the same time while hanging out with people who abuse your children. How awesome is that? Leon Black's a hell of a guy, isn't he? The absolute transfer of wealth that has occurred in the past 6 months is sickening. Black's regrets. The two men had been acquaintances since at least the early 90s. From time to time, Epstein met with Black at Apollo's New York offices, and he pitched personal tax strategies to the firm's executives, Bloomberg has reported. Again, why do you need Jeffrey Epstein pitching you tax strategies? What has Jeffrey Epstein ever accomplished to make a guy like Leon Black take him seriously? That's the question you have to ask yourselves, folks, and we have to keep digging for that answer. Apollo conducted an internal review into its involvement with Epstein to ensure that any ties went no further than the firm's co-founder. People with knowledge of the matter said last year. So he was in the Apollo offices pitching all this shit to Black, and he never talked to anybody else at Apollo? None of the other executives, huh? Nobody else sat in on those meetings? It was just the two of them? That's rather intimate. Was it candlelit? Did they share a milkshake with 2 straws? How about a plate of spaghetti like Lady and the Tramp? That included examining emails and records to determine there was no connection between the company and Epstein, one of the people said. With the benefit of hindsight and knowing everything that has come to light about Mr. Epstein's despicable conduct more than 15 years ago, I deeply regret having had any involvement with him, Black said in a letter to Apollo's limited partners dated last week. Look, man, Leon Black is in it up to his ears. He has big problems on the way, just like the rest of these guys. And if this does move in to the realm of RICO, like I think it's going to, like it almost has to at this point, and the prosecution and all of these regulators are serious about sending a message to the banking industry and the rest of the idiots who are caught up in the FinCEN files, well, here's your chance. Why don't you make an example of Jess Staley, of Leon Black, and the rest of these guys that enabled Jeffrey Epstein's decades-long crime spree? If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back with the Daily Drop, and we'll see what's going on with the deposition and the rest of the news surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein case.